This. All right, so what is the Kajenga Wellness Project? So Kajenga is a Black-led grassroots project designed to initiate supportive community resources for children, youth, adults, and families in Durham region. We strive to build our community foundation, promote holistic teaching and education, as well as promote mental wellness and healing from trauma. So first, we'll just get into our land acknowledgement. Kajenga Wellness Project acknowledges the land and people of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We are thankful to be welcomed to these lands in friendship. The lands we are situated on are covered under the Williams Treaties and the traditional territory of the Mississauga, a branch of the Great Ashanabeg Nation, including Algonquin, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Petawatomi. These lands remain home to a number of indigenous nations and people. We acknowledge this land out of respect for our indigenous nations who have cared for Turtle Island, also called North America, and from before the arrival of settler people until this day. Most importantly, we remember the history of these lands and have been tainted by poor treatment and a lack of friendship with the First Nations who call them home. This history is something we are all affected by, as we are all the treaty people of Canada. We all have a shared history to reflect on, and each of us is affected by the history in different ways. Our past defines our present, but if we move forward as friends and allies, then it does not have to define our future. So now for our African Canadian acknowledgement. As we begin, let's pause for a moment to remember our ancestral roots and the enslaved African people that were stolen from their homelands and traveled through the transatlantic route to build on lands we know as North America. Let us honor the enslaved people who built this nation. Let us recognize the histories of Ontario and across Canada as complicit with the racism of white supremacy. We recognize that these difficult histories persist in present day racial realities. We commit in dismantling racism in all spaces, and we invite you to come together with us to create change. Now, in terms of upcoming events, because I know there's going to be no room for this probably at the end of the conversation, so Kajenga does have more upcoming events. We have one next week for parents, which is called Navigating Parenting, with who Nicole Bedward will be facilitator of that program. It's open to all families that are welcome. I believe it's sold out, but we can open up more rooms because it's via Zoom. So again, that's next week at the same time. Also, every Thursday at 7 o'clock, well, actually until next week, we have Queens Unite, which is a women's support online program. And every night, every Wednesday night, we have the KUA program for new expecting moms or just moms that need support. And then we also have our Fahankra family drop-in, which is in person at the Harmony Wellness Center at 1099 Kingston Road in Pickering. And that's led by Curtis. So I was going to introduce each presenter, but I think I'm going to allow y'all to introduce yourselves. So I don't think Steven's here right now. Did he join?
Steven's here.
He's here?
I am.
We're okay. Do you mind just giving your giving your introduction, please?
Because his name is not okay.
Oh, is it not? Oh,
sorry.
I think
I'm
can't
Curtis Shepherd II, aka Stephen Linton. Who am I? I guess, as per the thing, I'm the school board trustee for Durham District School Board. First and preferred role is a father and proud father of two. Lived in Pickering for lots of years now. And yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Curtis Shepherd. Evander, would you like to just tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Evander Kobold, and I'm the Family and Community Outreach Worker at Durham Family and Cultural Center. So I've been in the social services field for, I would say, over 5 years. So the mission and purpose of my program here within DFCC is to provide timely, free, and culturally relevant services to Black and racialized children, youth, and families in the Durham region. Again, that consists of parenting support, counseling services, both informal, formal counseling, skills building workshops, and also general case management services and wraparound supports as well. So that's a bit about me to start.
Thanks so much, Evander. So next we have Jason York Best.
Peace, everybody. Thanks for having me here, man. It's an amazing pleasure to be around such amazing people that I look up to. I'm a family youth community worker, now homeless and substance abuse worker, you could say, / crisis worker. And I just look forward to being in more circles like this with the work that I've been doing throughout my years. I just love being a part of this stuff. So thank you all for reaching out to me. I appreciate it. That's peace.
And we also have Mark Rainford.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Tay. And thank you, Mr. Jack, for inviting me. And also thank you to my fellow panelists for being here and our guests. My background, my sort of highlight background is policing. I spent 15 years with Toronto Police Service. I left in 2016. So the expiry date for holding it against me has expired. It's done. You got to let it go. My area of focus now is community safety well-being, but my passion is mental health with first responders primarily, but I do some work with mental health with youth, racialized men. And I'm super happy to be here. I'm looking forward to learning from you all.
Thank you. And last but not least, our facilitators, John and Curtis, the other Curtis.
The original. Yeah.
I don't know who wants to introduce themselves first.
I'm Curtis, a family well-being worker and also program coordinator at IFRADA / Free Anchor. And I'm happy to be here, to be among, the brethren.
Thank you. Thank you so much. For myself, John Jack, I'm just a Black guy that likes to hang out with good people. I'm I'm the program and family outreach manager at Kajenga Wellness Project. I support my team, my well-being team at IFRADA Institute. My main goal and mandate is to support our Black community in Durham with as much resources as possible that will help them to start understanding and sorting out what their wellness needs to look like. It's really important for us to create some form of a tool belt that we could provide to our families and to individuals that they can use to help them navigate through these interesting times that we're living in right now. And I would like to welcome and thank all of my family here. Everyone in the screen here has impacted my life greatly over the years and recently. And I appreciate all of you for taking the time and being present through this discussion. You're muted, Tasia.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So I am going to kind of like disappear from the conversation. I will monitor the chat and
Thank you kindly.
please take it away.
Thank you so much. So yes, gents, I had questions, but now that I look at them, I really don't really care for questions like that. What I feel to do is to piggyback off of the discussion that was happening kind of off camera before we came on camera. Mark was talking about something that really resonates with me, and this is in terms of being in a position, being in a job, and realizing that, is this my purpose? Is this my purpose? Is this where I need to be at this point in time? And if it is not, how do I make that conscious decision to remove myself from that space? And knowing that I remove myself from that space, what impact is going to happen after I make that decision? How is that going to affect me? And it's a heavy one, because we all know that the climate that we live in, financially, everything is all over the place. And especially as we are older gentlemen, we don't always have the wiggle room to make quick transitions. Sometimes we always have to stay in a position that could be possibly toxic, could be a place that just doesn't resonate with us, could be just a place that it's just not the season for it. And to make that transition could be a little scary, could be a little bit scary, and not really know what the next steps is going to be, and what those outcomes are going to be. If you don't mind sharing, in terms of where you're at, and if you've ever been in that position before where you felt that you just needed mentally to make that shift because you knew where you were at was just not mentally conducive for your wellness. Feel free to check.
I'll take that on, because it's it's actually the landing point for me, where I met many of you when I was working for a program within the city. Let me say, within the city of Toronto. It was a passion and a place that I felt I needed to be at the time, because when I got into the position, it felt like the response to violence was a basketball tournament, right? All he needs is a basketball tournament and some jerk chicken, and they'll be good, right?
Mic drop. It's over. It's over.
Yeah, that's and they'll be good. And I felt our voice at the time was not represented at that level. Some good people, again, doing the work, but again, it's preaching to the choir. In order to know what the community wants and needs, you got to talk, you got to be in there, you got to have those conversations, and not sometimes between 9 and 5, and not at a boardroom or not in a library, but sometimes in the parking lot, right? Sometimes near a park bench. So, got into the position and was in there for 12 years, right? And, through that, raised a daughter, brought a son into this world. And, I think you've all been, most of us have been in the workshops together, where one of the things we said was, you got to keep an eye on your children. You've got to be there. You got to be present. You got to watch for those shifts and changes. And sometimes I was saying this at 8 o'clock at night while my own children were at home trying to put themselves to sleep, asking, when I was coming home. And then I responded to an incident, and I'll never forget it. Not to go into the details, but ultimately it was an incident where a young woman ended up killing herself. And I supported the family with the funeral. And because at the time my daughter was playing sports, I knew exactly her stats. And the young woman's stats were the exact same as my daughter's at the time. So if you had just read that piece of paper and read those stats, you could have put my daughter in place. But there still seemed to be a lot of work that needed to be done, right? Still communities. We'd had great success. Mark and I had gone to many communities. John Jack and I just, a couple years before, finished supporting a community in one of the most intense incidents that I think the city has seen. And somewhat successfully, because we brought about programs and people took another look at how you run those programs. But I needed to go.
Yes.
but I felt guilty going.
Mhm.
But I didn't feel guilty going because I wanted and needed to be a father. So it was that, what do I do? And to this day, I'll say I struggle because, you know, not that I think I brought anything special to the role, but there was an ability to have some really hard conversations with some really hard people, right? And scary people, right? But I did it with no fear because just growing up, I never had a fear of talking to any and everyone. And once you got into those conversations and dialogue, some real cool and interesting things came out, and you were able to kind of de-escalate certain pieces. So as I, you know, through the years, I've seen incidents go up and down, and I'm like, did I make the right decision? Am I responsible for leaving at that time for the death of some young people? Because I would have done it differently, right? When you see the beef, it's like, no, 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 just go and talk to that person, right? And de-escalate.
Yes.
So, yeah, you know, I'll stop there, but
thank you.
yeah.
No, I appreciate many points that you made there in terms of, am I making the right decision? Because my heart is here to support all these people who do need my support, but at the same time, I know I need to be a little bit more visible for my family. And it's important to me because in frontline work, we spend majority of our hours and our time there. We end up building a home outside of our home. Being in the community, you have mothers, aunties, grannies cooking us food, doing all these wonderful things that a community, that a village does. And by the time you wrap up your day, you are too mentally exhausted to connect with your family on a deep level. Or do you want to talk about what your day consisted of?
So if I could jump in, I'm going to push back on my good friend Batman, aka Batman, Stephen Linton.
Yes.
So I'm going to put this out more broadly to all of us, all the men that are here doing this kind of work. Stephen, you do bring something special, and you are special in what you do. And I think one of the common threads between all of us is we readily and quickly identify the specialness of the other, but we don't within ourselves. That's a Black thing, right? And so there are other people, there are other cultures that actually start with identifying themselves first and then measure people against them themselves, right? So I think that's the first thing I'd say, is that we need to come to a recognition that the reason why we do approach burnout is because people want us in those spaces, and we honor that. We honor those relationships. There are other people doing our same jobs that don't feel burnout because they haven't connected. There isn't a draw. There isn't something pulling them to those communities because they're not as affected because they haven't connected. They aren't as special, right? So coming back to the question now about, you know, when do you make these decisions? I've made that decision about leaving without a follow-up plan twice in my life. And both times were built on the same premise. And the premise was, if I stay where I am, where will my health go? Right? So that's question number one. And so one of the things that I use as a tool to evaluate the leaving piece is when you hit a high mark, where that question becomes relevant, where you say, should I leave? Should I stay? The approach that I take is, how much of my life do I see entangled in this problem?
Right.
What is causing me to feel I have to leave? Is it family life? Is it external things? Is it just the work? Like, how many things is it, right? And in both cases, there were enough things going on in life that on their own were plenty to handle. And then on top of it, the work has a stress.
Yes.
And the model that I use is really about breaking these things apart, not allowing my mind to say that they're all fused together, that it's binary. It's either I stay or I leave. what I look at is I leave to take care of this, knowing that I will find whatever means of employment I need to do to satisfy the material needs of this. Right? So sometimes you have to take a step back to then actually move forward. Right? Yes. And I think, one of the things is, when our work has so much purpose, we fall into a trap of seeing the purpose of work as replacing our identity. It becomes our identity. Right? And I think that's where we need to wall off. We can have a lot of purpose with work, but remind ourselves it's not who we are. It's a part of who we are. And it's starting, if it's bleeding over and everything else, and the work is still, it's starting to get toxic, it's usually the only thing that's movable. You can't unfamily yourself. Nice. Right? There are a lot of things that you can't remove. And if you were to remove them, the ramifications for many other people is enormous.
Yes.
Right? So yes, there are financial stressors. I'm about to embark on that, I'm sure. Right? But what I know is that if I am healthier, I am more resilient to take on that stress than I am if I stay just to get that next check. That's actually wearing down my resilience. Nice. The clock is ticking, right?
Nice. I absolutely love everything that you say there. And you cannot unfamily yourself. that was a great saying that you mentioned there. Absolutely. Jay, did you want to chime in on this?
Yeah. This is a good opener because this is something that I usually call you every 3 weeks with a good conversation about in regards to your validity in the work that you're doing, your validity in the relationships that you have, your validity in the work of or the impact that your work is making in community when you're battling a beast as big as music and television and all the things that have our future wrapped up into it. And here you are with your small little jukebox trying to play this music of consciousness to wake people up and give them a direction because you see the direction they're going. And I have definitely I'm still battling with this decision of, did I make the right move? Is it the right move? The role I'm in right now is a part of me taking care of me, because going back to Mark's point, if you're not well, then how can you help others be well?
Mm-hmm.
And I was noticing that because I felt like I was on a wheel, I need to get off the wheel to see if I generated enough power to see if the wheel was going in a positive direction. And that it messed with me. It messed with me. It messed with my ego. It messed with my mental health of just being sure. My ego, because I'm not the go-to. I'm not going to get the calls. I'm not going to be involved. I'm not going to be there to throw my imaginary cape on and somewhat save somebody, somewhat save a family, somewhat be that steady, stable peace in someone's family. And sitting here listening to you, gentlemen, and listening to this question, and it resonates to me such in a way where I'm sitting here going, other people feel it too. Other people experience it too. And we've all had to make that decision. And in making that decision, I know that everyone still wonders, was it the right one? Because when you hear something happen, you know the probabilities of the different variables of why that situation happened and how it could have been prevented and how it could have been avoided. And you hear just the rhetoric, you hear the news, you hear everything. And even now when I'm in a different position that's kind of somewhat removed from it, I hear individuals talking, and you kind of want to set people straight,
Hmm?
you know.
Yes.
So I'm still working. I'm a work in progress. I always say I'm a work in progress. With this decision, I'm still a work in progress. And I believe that for anyone in this field right now, it's something you have to consider. And I remember coming to you, John, when I was going to make the decision, and you mentioned something to allowing someone else to do the work, creating space for someone else so that it proves that the work that we've done, not just myself, but all of us here, has reached enough people that someone else says, I want to do it now. I'm willing to take it. I'm willing to lift the bag. And I gently placed it down so someone else can take it.
Mhm,
That's mine.
mhm. I enjoy that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I like that you said in terms of a work in progress, because I think that's one of the most important things to for that type of feeling and emotion to be consistent, to always be in progress and checking in with yourself, giving yourself reminders and checking off it, saying that, you know what, this is what I have accomplished thus far, and this is what my goals are moving forward. And it's okay to have that kind of movement. Doesn't matter what age you're at. It's okay to have that consistent movement. Curtis, did you want to chime in regards to?
Sure. I guess it's two questions I always ask myself. One, if I'm broken, how could I help another person who's broken?
Mhm.
And the next question I ask myself is, who am I?
Mhm.
You know, I'm not omnipresent. Uh, I got my I got to accept my limitations. There are limits to what I do. Um, what is my call? I can't solve every problem. I don't know everything. So that sort of helps me, you know, um, to remain in a place of peace, accepting the fact that, there's hard decisions that has to be made. And what is my priority? What is my goal? What is most important? You know, because I cannot be two places at the same time. So I got to be comfortable enough to make a decision, to make a choice and be able to live with it, you know. So that's just my two cents there.
That question that you had there in terms of who am I is one of the most difficult questions to answer,
Yeah.
because it takes a lot of reflection and going a little bit deep to really um, to display who you are, and you could be multiple things. It can't be just one thing. You could be loving, you could be strategic, you could be whatever it is. But to actually take time to sort out what that is, you need a moment. You truly need a moment to really to sort out those things. Evander, would you like to chime in on that?
Yes, of course. So regarding my, I would say, career journey, I think it's been somewhat of a roller coaster to say the least. I would say, so I think the best analogy I can give to kind of start the conversation is I felt like in terms of I know there's like high school players or college players that may succeed, and let's say in the basketball analogy, and they may do well in high school or college, and then may fall flat on their face when they get to the pros, right, or the league. So I felt that was kind of my story. I felt like I did very well academically. I would say in high school and university, um, and I feel like I was able to find my passion, right, when it comes to um helping the community in various areas when it comes to issues related to mental health, anti-black racism, issues related to identity was a big issue, self-esteem. But I felt like after I graduated from university, um, I felt the harsh realities of finding difficulties, finding what my actual calling was, right? So I felt like I had ideas of what I wanted to get into, but I felt like it took a lot of time, right, to actually find what that really it was in terms of an actual role, right? And I feel like during that time, I definitely struggled a lot just mentally, feeling as I provided the example of feeling I was not good enough, right? In comparison to my previous self, right? So I had issues of comparing my current self during that time to my previous self, right? In terms of how I looked at myself, so that it kind of led to a lot of difficulties, right, in navigating kind of the employment in general. But I feel like with time, um, and with just getting into different roles, I was able to kind of learn more about who I was, right? And I feel like once I learned more about who I was and what I was really into, I feel like that helped me to kind of lead to a path, right? In terms of when it comes to careers, right? And I feel like in my role previous to my current role, um, I felt like I wasn't I feel like I was in a good role, but I was not in the right place, right? In terms of the organizational structure, right? In terms of the people, in terms of the leadership, right? And it was very difficult for me to leave that job. I sat on it for several months, right, before I actually took the leap to leave, due to like the economic realities, familiar pressures, right? It definitely took a lot, but I feel like um the fear of the unknown definitely stopped me. That was a big factor, but I feel like it was all worth it at the end of the day, knowing where I am today, right? Because I feel like just where I'm at today, I feel like my mission, my passion, and my talents and skills are all aligning as one, and I feel like I'm at the perfect place right now. I know it may change, right? Life is forever changing, but I feel like as of today, um, I'm comfortable where I'm at, and I feel like I am living out my true calling and passion. And again, as I mentioned, it may or it will change over time. There's always just changing processes. But yeah, that's my a little bit about my story.
I enjoy what you said in regards to there were times where I was comparing my new self to my old self. And I find that happens a lot because, especially when you were comfortable in your old self, and there were times where you're like, yeah, man, this is it. But then there was a time where you're like, nah, this is not it. And when you move on from your old self, would you say that would everyone say that there's a point where we go through um, stages of grief? Once we remove ourselves from something, that we go through, let's say, shock and denial that this is no longer me. We transition into guilt and like, man, did I waste my time? Why did I do that to myself? Like I should have known better. And then from the guilt transitioning into the anger, saying, like, man, I'm a fool. I can't believe maybe I should go back. You have this bargaining where like maybe I should just go back to my old self because that was safe, right? And then some of us sometimes go through that feeling down, and if you want to put a title, depression, because you're like, I don't know who I am right now. I thought I knew who I was. Like, I was here 1 minute, I was good a week ago, and then now I'm in this position, and I don't know. I don't know who I am. And then it takes some time to be exposed to some conversation and some reflection. You're like, you know what? Okay, get my crap together. Let's move. Let's move on. And then you start the reconstructing phase of this is how I have to piece myself together. And then that's when we kind of move into our acceptance and hoping for the best and moving on to that next level. So would that be fair to say that we do go through the stages of grief when we have to make those kind of transitions?
So if I could jump in on this, because I love this, and I think, I've been, most of you know quite a bit of the stuff I've been through, but I will frame it this way, is that I think the first one or two times it manifests as grief. It's wearing a mask that looks like grief.
Yes.
When you've been through enough of those moments, you start to realize that underneath the mask of grief is actually resilience, because that's what's being built, right? Is that you start to have a mental history of, hey, I've been through something like this and I came out. And then sometime later, I have returned to this situation. And with each time that it happens, you start to realize that you have a resume of overcoming. And once you flip your mind to realizing it's not setbacks, it's actually a resume of overcoming, that's when it becomes resilience. And it starts to become easier for you to assign yourself a value that is undeniable to you. You start to create clearer boundaries that allow you to say, I accept a certain level of toxicity in a situation, and it will not go past that because I know I've done it before and I'll get through it. Right. And so I think it's a good exercise for people to be uncomfortable knowing that they have been through similar things. If you go back to your childhood, you had similar things, but they were playground things. But you know them now as playground things. At the time, they were not. They were like life-altering things, right? So our histories are filled with the same recurring theme of setback, doubt, rejection, fear, uncertainty. They just always look different. And with each stage of life, they have different masks on. But once you get to that place of reminding yourself, this is just another Lego piece of building my resilience.
Yes.
Right. It's easier to take, right? And I think the other thing with the comparison of, our new self versus our old self, I think part of what makes that so difficult is our old selves have accomplishments attached to them. And our new selves are about to have to try to create new accomplishments. So we feel like we're starting over. We're like, man, that guy is known and that guy's received stuff and that guy's got street cred. This guy doesn't. And now I got to do that again. Right. And I think, again, that all ties together with resilience. And I think if we embrace the fact that we've done this before, think about missing the layup in overtime, thinking of getting back on the court, and then 5 games later, you're hitting the winning shot. That's resilience. It manifests in a million different ways in our lives. And if we keep tying these events, right? If we tie our grief and our accomplishments closer together to say this is part of the resilience package, I think we tend to be okay, right?
Yes. And yes, everything that you said there in terms of building your resilience and that being built over time due to your experiences through life and being able to kind of collect all those journeys, make sense of it, and let yourself know that I've been here already and I'm okay. I think it's important to have those affirmations for yourself because I feel that when there's hesitancy and there's a situation that you're about to embark on, sometimes there's an ounce of doubt. And if anything negative happens through that journey, that doubt begins to expand. So it's important to maintain those affirmations to say, I'm okay. I do have a question though for all of you. What do you owe yourself? Because we always say that we owe our family time, love, support. Financially, we need to be stable. What do you owe yourself?
I owe myself honesty. To be true to myself, so I can be true to others, to accept me for who I am, my strengths, my areas of concerns and development, to accept me, to be honest with me. Because if honesty is not within me, then I can't identify with with honesty, then I'll be living a facade. I'll be living a lie. I'll be, assuming a false identity, pretending to be someone that I'm not, trying to fit in, wearing a mask, wearing different masks, trying to fit in, with each environment that I actually go into. Whereas I should be taking me in, like, this is me, this is who I am. So, honesty for me, being true to myself.
Honestly, the best of policy. I love that.
Yeah.
And anyone else that would like to share, what do you owe yourself?
I'd like to follow that with grace and the patience that I provide others. Being able to sit in stillness for other people and provide that space of sound and security for others. I feel I owe that to myself. A lot of times I have to constantly stop myself and say, give yourself some, like, it's okay. Like, it's all right. You're allowed. You can and you will be okay. And the same way I would do it for someone else. And not just in decision making, in that feeling of who am I some days? In did I make the right choice with my life? The journey that I've walked to right now, sitting here at this panel talking, it's okay. It's good. Giving myself that grace is what I owe myself.
I enjoy that, giving yourself that grace. Who else would like to chime in on this?
Yeah, so I can definitely jump in on this conversation. So I would say I would say the word self-love is the word that comes to mind first, right? Because I feel like with all of us in this field, right? I feel like we give so much, right, of ourselves, right? Just helping others day in and day out, right? But I feel like for me specifically, there are moments where I may give more love to others than I give to myself, right? And I think it comes down to like health. I owe myself to take care of my health, right? And when I say the word health, health is a very all-encompassing word, right? When you think of health, it could be financial health, spiritual health, mental health, physical health, right? So I feel like I owe myself self-love, and that's just making sure I take care of myself, right? And of course, as you guys know, once you have that foundation, you can then pour into others. So I think that's what I would say self-love for me.
That's powerful. Because sometimes one would deem that selfish if you decide to turn inward and say, oh, myself, self-love, instead of always being the one to always give and extend the olive branch all the time. And you're right, it's important to identify self-love, because we don't spend enough time doing that, right? Nurturing yourself, treating yourself properly. And as you say, encompassing all of it, right? All everything that falls under the umbrella of health, from financial to wellness, all of it. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd follow that with joy, right? I owe myself joy. Because the funny thing is, we know where that joy is for us, right? And I like that when how you linked it to health, because sometimes that joy is what brings us that health. Because to experience that joy, we have to stop the world, the fast-paced nature of the world, to experience that joy. In the summer, sometimes the joy for me is finishing work and just sitting on the step and watching my son just run around. And it brings me down, and it's like, there it is. There's the foundation, and this is what it's about, right? Those moments where he can just be him. And that's the joy. And automatically, my blood pressure feels good. The headaches are gone. I'm breathing easy, and my health gets better. It's interesting because I was at my doctor the other day, and he said, it's like, what's going on? What's happening? And I was explaining, and it's like, the one thing I advise that I can't prescribe for you, but he said, you need to lower your intake of bad news.
Mm.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe.
right.
Right?
Stephen, I'll stop calling, buddy. I'll stop calling. Sorry.
But it was interesting because I think about those moments that I'm watching my son, but I'm not watching CP24,
Mhm.
right? I'm waiting for that breaking news. The moment that I'm engaging with my daughter to see how she's doing, and I'm not engaging in an argument or a disagreement,
Yes.
right? So, I think that was profound, and just the joy of doing those things has that impact like almost immediately on your health. So yeah, Evander, I feel that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark.
So yeah, I will add faith.
Mm.
And so I'll tell you the story really quick because it literally changed my life. So some years ago when I left policing, we were given till the end of the week for my mom to pass. She was bleeding and they couldn't stop the bleeding. And I live in Pickering. I went down to the lake and I was sitting there and I was having a conversation with God.
Mhm.
And in the previous 3 years to my mom's stuff, two of my closest friends died by suicide. And I felt the weight of tragedy just all over me. And I remember saying to myself, I was like, what is happening here? Why is this all happening? And I tried to connect all these seemingly random things and how do they connect to me? So I put myself through an exercise and said, what if God is trying to talk to me through these things? And so the first friend who died by suicide, I went to university with him. He ended up teaching at my high school that I went to. So I was like, okay, he represents my youth and he represents university.
Yes.
My second friend who died by suicide also went to university with me and he became a cop. And I was like, okay, he represents university and my career up until the day I was at the lake. I was like, these guys got my whole life captured.
Mm.
Then I thought about my mom and I was like, she represents family. God is sending me a message of every piece of my life. And I sat there and I said, he's trying to tell me something. I'm off course. And I realized at the time that I'd put so much into policing that I created the false idol of me, the police officer. It had taken over my identity. Right. And I thought, okay, if I don't change this now, the only person he's going to talk to me through is my daughter. And she was 3. And I said, God, I hear you. I went to my mom right away and I said, I'm leaving policing. As soon as I said it, I felt the stress leave my body. Like literally one of those things where people tell you they have like that life altering thing left my body right away.
Real.
And so I say this because there are things that we do that without connecting to our faith, we can't make sense of them. And so other situations have to come to give us greater clarity. Right. Whereas if we actually involve our faith and kind of say, hey, man, like I need some sight, right? Before I make some moves, I need to see some other things and try to find them, not with our eyes, but with our energy, right? And it could be chance encounters with friends and family. It could be a variety of things, but you start to feel it, right? You start to feel that North Star of faith that will guide, right? So for me, it's faith.
Yes, that I'd have to say that everything that was mentioned there, I'd have to amalgamate all those together. And what I would say, especially in terms of faith, man, the saying goes, without affliction, you don't understand the amazingness of the Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to go through some interesting seasons and some trials and tribulations to really understand the power of something greater than you, and being able to accept it, embrace it, and to welcome it, bringing joy, loving oneself, truth. All of those are important to encompass in your lives. Not necessarily all at the same time and not necessarily in that order, but to acknowledge it, that it's needed. It's taken me some time. It's taken me up until my 49 years of life really understand myself, to understand what it means to love myself, to connect myself to God, to love my friends, everyone in this space, to really, really just embrace life, and not to kind of put myself in this negative space of like, oh, you shoulda, coulda, woulda type of stuff. I used to do that quite frequently, because I always used to set the bar really high for myself. But now I am willing to now just to lower, not necessarily lower the bar, but really embrace the journey that I have, the time and space that I'm here for, right? And to appreciate all the relationships and things that have come within my journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of it, from bad relationships to good relationships, the friends that have passed, everything. I'm learning to truly appreciate all of those times that have possibly caused stress and whatever it was, because it's purposeful. It was all purposeful. What I would like to ask now is in terms of, I know Stephen he mentioned in terms of he went to his doctor. I went to my doctor just the other day, also recently. How important is it to all of you to maintain your health in terms of actually booking an appointment and going to your doctor and sharing all of the things that you have concerns about? When you arrive there, do you say everything, or you just say a few things because in your mind you're like, I don't want him to tell me anything bad, so I'll just, when I show up, even though I know there's a pain in my side, I'd be like, you know what, doc, I had this little thing happening on my hand here. I think it's going away, and you don't address the pain in the side. How many of you are comfortable enough in terms of sharing what you need to share with your doctor?
I'm comfortable. But it wasn't comfortable until I had real conversations with likes of yourself and other individuals that I could trust and confide in. And it was made to be okay. Like, even, Black man is invincible. You talk to any of your uncles or your father, and just trying to talk about ailments that you can see, visibly see, and be like, look, man, let me help you with this thing. Nah, it's all right, it's okay, don't worry. And we take that on, and that gets passed on, right? And now we're in this new age of, addressing things and looking out for things, early signs and things like that. So I'm comfortable. Mind you, I may call you, John, or I may call someone else and be like, yo, man, like, this is what's going on. Might go to the doctor and check it out. Just kind of like a buffer to kind of like give myself a practice run almost on how I'm going to say it or how I'm going to talk about it, and get that confidence to bring it up. So yeah, I'd like to say that I'm confident. I'm comfortable.
Yes. No, that's good. And I like what you said in terms of the practice run, because I don't know if it's white coat syndrome, whatever they want to call it, but when you actually reach inside that space, there's a couple of things that kind of run through, especially my mind. And I'm like, what do I want to pick and choose? What do I want to tell? Instead of me just laying everything out on the table. And sometimes I'm afraid of, if I say too much, the most important thing will get dismissed. So I kind of just want to walk in there with two of the most important concerns I have, and hopefully come out with something that rubs my back a little bit and tells me everything's going to be okay, type of thing. Anyone else would like to chime in terms of their commitment to going to the doctor's office and sharing what they need to share? Evander, you're about to say something?
Yeah, so for me, I would say again, it's been a journey. I feel like I've gotten a lot better in terms of being able to express exactly what's going on, like health-wise, if there's anything with my doctor, right? I feel like earlier on in my life, I I tend to engage in, as you mentioned, like filtering what you're gonna say and picking and choosing, and also like minimizing your experiences or feeling like you can get over this like on your own, like it's not that big of a deal, right? But again, as I've gotten older, um, I've realized that it is important to share because of the importance of just physical health in general, right? And just knowing the health outcomes of the disparities when it comes to Black men, right? Just having that understanding and knowing that it's important to give a concerted effort, right? To even I feel like it's always better in those circumstances to overshare rather than undershare, right? And I think it's important too to have a healthcare professional that you trust, right? I think trust is a big part when being vulnerable and when you need to be vulnerable, right?
Mhm.
So part of the trust is very important as well. So those are my thoughts.
Trust is heavy. I agree. Absolutely.
Actually, I'm
I'm
going
gonna
to
say, oh,
go ahead.
go ahead, Steve.
So I was going to jump on a point that Jason made earlier, which is, you know, your circle, right? Because I think now, one of my closest friends, me and him talk all the time, and we've normalized going to the doctor. But if I think about years past, it's like, oh, I've got a pain in my shoulder. That's okay. Just rub some Vicks on it, or take some Bay Rum and rub it on it. Oh no, you just need, So there'd be all these remedies that someone would advise you, but there was never you need to go and see a doctor, right? But I found as my circle has grown and matured, and my circle has normalized the doctor as part of the practice, I feel more comfortable speaking to my doctor, because then I feel comfortable to come back to speak about what my doctor said. Again, earlier I said my doctor said, it wasn't, my best friend said, or a wise person says. My doctor said decrease your intake of bad news. So the comfort level, I would say, is twofold. It's yes with the doctor, but it's because I'm now comfortable to share in my circle as a method to us all winning and us all being well. And let me share that practice with you, because I'm rooting for you. And I think on this call, we're all rooting for each other, right? We want to see each other well. So, a practice of the entire pie is, that conversation, feeling safe in those conversations. But part of that is having those open conversations, that open dialogue with the doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yes, as your circle widens, the conversations start to flow a little bit more, and the conversation about a doctor becomes more comfortable within that space. Yes, absolutely, Stephen. No, that makes sense to me. Mark.
So I'm reluctant, but I'll share this with you because I'm motivated for a reason that's slightly different. So in university, I tore my meniscus in my knee, first practice of the year. And I played the whole season limping, thinking I overtrained. I didn't go to the doctor. So from September, I didn't go to the doctor until March, because I'd stopped training for like almost 3 months, still had the pain. And he said, oh, you tore your meniscus and the scar tissue has already grown over it. Now you need surgery. I stayed with this ill-fated medical sort of practice in my mind, and it changed one day. And the day it changed was when my daughter was born. And what happened then was I knew that her medical history was tied to mine. And so if the doctor didn't have any of my stuff, they weren't going to be able to help her with her stuff in the future. So that was the only motivation to say, you know what, I got to come correct with this, even for my own reasons. I benefit, but I was like, you know what, I owe it to her to have a clearer picture if she needs it.
Absolutely.
So that's it. That's the motivation, right?
There's no other better motivation than that. Absolutely. Curtis.
Yeah, fear is a factor, and fear sort of keep us back from, making that step in the right direction. You know, if we really love life and understand life and appreciate life, you know, we'll realize that the doctor is part of our community, you know, part of the circle of care, you know, that we belong, and knowing is half the battle. When you know, you can make an informed decision as to what's the next step in, you know, what direction you're actually going to take. You know, so for me, I embrace my doctor, you know, not being afraid to, you know, have heart-to-heart conversations, ask hard questions, and because it helps me to know me and understand me. And as you said, your history, your medical history, you know, you understanding your own medical history would help you to understand the medical history of your children. You know, so, you know, when you think of it that way, you know, taking care of your health and staying on top of things, you know, you can at least minimize the impact on whatever it is that, you know, you may basically encounter. So fear is a factor. Once you remove the fear, and when you look at it too, you know, for people who has, you know, who have the benefits and stuff like that, you know, we are paying into all these different things, and we have access to it, you know, so why not utilize it? You know, there are folks that don't have that opportunity, and they wish, you know, they all the different challenges and health that they're dealing with, but they don't have the finances. They don't have some of the basic things that we have, but we don't actually utilize. So why not put it to use?
Yes, absolutely agree. And removing that fear plays a big role in comfortability, being able to share that stuff. Um, do um, do all of you have a doctor that reflects you, a Black doctor? No.
Yeah.
Yes, it's two yeses. Yes.
Yeah,
So yeah, for myself also, it was really challenging because back in the day, my doctor was old school West Indian, Trinidadian, and very blunt, and I enjoyed that. And after he passed away, it was challenging for me because I couldn't find someone that was going to emulate or be exactly or somewhat close to him. I searched, and I found my family doctor. And the guy, he's a great guy, um, but there was a time where I had to go for like a full examination. You know, a full examination. They gotta check your balls. They gotta check all that kind of stuff. And he was very uncomfortable. I noticed it. I noticed he was uncomfortable. And with him being uncomfortable, that makes me uncomfortable. But then I just wanted to get it over with because I'm like, I'm here. I had to build the courage to actually say, this is what I got to get done today. Let's get it over with. And instead of just going through that whole process, it kind of became a kind of short conversation like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. Are you okay with that? I'm like, don't ask me if I'm okay with it. Just do what you got to do. Let's get it done. And it became very uncomfortable. And after that particular situation, I have never went back for a full physical. Now I'm at the age where it's important because now you have to check for prostate and all those particular things that you have to scan for. I now have to build back up my trust, as we were saying, and remove the fear in order to get that stuff done. And I have a cousin, my first close cousin of mine. He sends me texts and messages probably every other month. He's like, "Boy, you get your balls checked yet?" And I'm just like, I'm gonna book it. Relax." And he's like, "No, no, honestly." He's like, "I got it done." And he goes, "To be honest, you know, after it was done, I wanted to lock the doctor's door and have a duel to death because I didn't want anyone to ever do that to me." And I'm just like, "All right." And he's like, "I went home, I laid on my bed in the fetal position for about a couple hours, and then I was good." And I was like, "All right." And he jokes about it, and he creates a very safe space to have that conversation. But now it's for me mentally, to remove the past awkwardness that I had before, and for me to move forward and to get this done, because it's really important. It's important for us to do these prostate cancer checks and stuff like that. Even if you don't have it within your family, it's just part of a scanning of the body. Are all of you comfortable with moving forward with getting a test like that done? Because there's a lot of stigma around it also. As we know, people say, "Oh, you're gonna let doctor push two fingers up in your backside and all that kind of stuff," and that's part of the test. That's what it is. And to me, I'm like, after all these years, you didn't come up with a different technology. We have AI, we have Chat GPT, and you're still doing that?
Yeah, no, they do the new technologies with the white guys.
Oh man.
So I will answer your question about the comfort, and you'll find this super, I think it's super fascinating.
Yeah.
So given the past profession of policing, and part of that job being to search people, pat searches and things of that nature, I understand the mindset of the professional that has to do something that the individual feels is violating, right?
Yes.
So I have the benefit of that. So for me going to the doctor, I'm like, I remember what it was like searching people. I took zero pleasure in that.
Yes.
It's not memorable. I have to scrub my brain of what it is I had to do. And I knew that it was for a greater purpose. And so I applied the same principle to medicine. I'm like, if you got to do what you got to do to make me come out at the other end of this feeling better, go for it, man.
Yeah.
Right? Change the oil, do what you got to do, buddy. Right? So
it's such a difficult one. Anyone else, are you comfortable with going through that process and booking that test and knowing that getting that done is beneficial?
To be honest with you, my thing is not necessarily the comfortability. It's about making time, taking time to go and do it. I feel I share the same sentiments as Mark. As you know, I see that ability to just scrub it out of your mind, do what you got to do. It's more just like taking time to take notice and check on my body and be like, I got to do this. You know, work isn't that important, because I find, and I know you guys could share this with me, is that sometimes we put work at the paramount of everything, as who you are and all the things you do, and things just fall to the wayside. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to do it next month for sure. Yeah, I'm going to get that done. And then something else comes up, and you just keep going, and the days bleed into days and continues. So for me, it's just mostly just really stopping and going, I'm going to go do it.
Yes. Stopping and saying, I'm going to do it, and you just do it. And that too shall pass. Stream of thinking once it's done. If anyone feels to chime in, feel free to chime in. I do have a question that I would like to ask.
Yeah, I was going to say just kind of what Mark said around the history and how important it is. And it's your reason why. And, I think one of the things we've all said is that we have sacrificed for the people that we love, right? Like we've not taken or taken positions for the people that we love. We have put ourselves in or taken ourselves out of situations for the people that we love. And this is a task for the people that we love, because not only do they need us here, but they want us there. And when we talk about joy, we bring a joy to certain people's lives. So if that test, and I can speak to this because same thing when I did my physical, we got into that, right? But it was the importance of the results and what that could do as an early preventative measure for my children, right? Having that history. So, when you've got that as your foundation, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but you're walking out knowing now we know better, so we can do better. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely approve of that PSA for sure. That's important. Walking out knowing that you can do better and you know better. Yeah. Yep. I agree. I have some questions that are in the chat room here that I would throw out to everyone. One that I see here says, what do you suggest is a good idea to encourage men to create these spaces? Very similar to what we have here. What would be a good idea to keep these things going, to create it, especially for Black men?
The continue of spaces like this, and as we talked about leaving our old position, is encouraging new voices to be in the conversation. And not only individuals like ourselves who have journeys, like we have journeys amongst us all. You know, this would be an amazing chapter book or television series if all of our lives were documented. Bring individuals that don't have that much, but just a little of a journey thus far into the conversation. And as to educating, but be educated on the lens that they look at life through. And I feel that that would create the space, because then it would trickle down. It's the same way with the things that our young people are getting involved with right now. You know, they're getting involved with things that are way above their pay grade. And we're saying, what are you doing? How do you get involved with this? We need to do the same thing with these kind of conversations and bring them in, not as pupils, as teachers as well, as facilitators as well, as co-facilitators, and let them feel empowered that they can go back and make that be the cool thing that they're talking about, you know, and inspire future doctors and physicians.
Yeah, yeah. Everything you said there, and just being able to include everyone in this space. I think it would have been wonderful to even have some younger voices in the space to share, and to have some elders in the space to share some of their wisdoms and jewels and gems, because it has to be a collective in order to have this continuous and having impact different generations, right? Yeah.
But I'd say maybe to chime in,
Yes.
because I think there's been efforts to do this a number of times, but it's almost like we've got a magical number. So if I don't have 50 people there, it's not worth it, right? If I only have, I need to have 80 people, but 5 people, this is powerful. 3 people, this is powerful. 10 people, this is powerful. So I say that, but I also say we also have to start showing up and taking the time to be there, because it really is one of the, I don't want to go. But when you go there, it's just like, wow, right? And you know, we've seen it. I'm sure we've all been there, where it is that event. But you know, I've got this thing that I've got to prepare for, and then but I don't want to wake up late. But these moments are so powerful because there's so much. One, there's synergy. So there's things that you were thinking, and you're like, am I right thinking it? And someone else says it, and now it's like that connection. Or there's different perspectives. But in order to do it, you have to allow yourself, like Jay said, the time to come to these spaces, right? And feel and experience that there is knowledge in our community. We are amazing. We are phenomenal. We have experience. We can relate to each other like no one else can. But sometimes we just don't create the space and time for us to embrace it.
Yes, absolutely. Everything. Yes, go
If I
ahead.
could jump in. Well, by the way, I'm driving. My apologies. I got to get my daughter. But one of the things I think that is an obstacle for things like this is that often we equate these things to being safe spaces, right? And so as I've shared with you all, I do presentations on mental health for police officers. And I can tell you that is the least safe space you will ever find, even though it's got all kinds of guns in it. It's super uncomfortable, right? Because they know going in, they're talking about police suicide, police mental health.
Yes.
But what happens is they don't know what the presentation is. They know what it's about, okay? And what happens is myself and another former officer actually talk about our journey through depression.
Yes.
So they get a presentation about the two people telling them about themselves. And the reason why I bring it up is that whenever we try to create these environments,
Yes.
nobody thinks the space will ever be safe because they think they're going to be asked by somebody else to talk about themselves, not that person talking about themselves. And so you set the tone, right? This is why this is effective, is all of us on this panel are more than happy to share with the listeners
Yes.
everything we have to offer. There is no behind the curtains. And so once you let people know that the thing they're about to go to is about people sharing what they've experienced in their lives and how they've overcome or whatever. Like once people know that, hey, I'm going to listen to some people try to create a dialogue that starts with some of their crap, you kind of go, okay, I can take the night off. I'm listening to some people give me some insight through their eyes.
Yes.
I think that helps make it a little bit more accessible for people because they don't feel like they're going to be lit up. And people tend to follow where something goes.
Yes.
So if you allow people into your life and you don't judge them for asking you questions, they tend to be like, oh, okay, cool. I want to share too. Because they know that you are, by the nature of you sharing and by the nature of you welcoming questions, they go, you know what, I can contribute to this because I know that this is what this vibe is.
Valid. Absolutely valid. And I'm going to blend in this other question. There's 3 more. How can you encourage the men in our lives to take time for themselves, to take time to connect with themselves? So this is coming from a voice from a person who's expressing in terms of their family. There's men in the family. How can you encourage them? How can you motivate them to take time for themselves?
So I can jump into this question here. So the first thing I think of when I hear that question is that I feel like they need to know that they deserve to take care of themselves or take time for themselves, right? I think that's a part of it too, like knowing that, and I think understanding that its importance is very important as well. Like knowing that it is important for you to take care of yourself, because I think oftentimes, as I mentioned previous, oftentimes the men in our lives are giving of themselves in various areas, right? In terms of being, whether it's providers, protectors, contributors in various areas of their lives, right? But I feel like just having the understanding and the knowledge, right, that there there's more positive than there's more good than harm that will come from that action of taking care of themselves. So I think it's first beginning the dialogue and the conversation and hearing what their hesitations are, potential hesitations are for engaging that in that self-care or those or behaviors related to that.
Okay. Yes. Absolutely. Informing them, letting them know that it's okay to take time is the most important thing. Because and to be authentic about it. Because sometimes you could have someone in your space to say, you know what, you need to take time for yourself. But before you do that, can you go do this for me, please? You know what I mean? And it just doesn't feel authentic. You're saying it just to say it. It's important to be truly empathetic and compassionate and say, you know what, I can recognize that you need some time. Go take time. And that kind of bleeds into, there's one question here. I'm going to skip over, we're going to get back to that one. How do we intentionally check in with other men and get past the I'm okay when you hear it in their voice that they're not? So with this question is, how do you intentionally check in with another man, someone in your family, and when you get the I'm okay, and you can tell they're not okay, how do you get past that without agitating them and in creating another issue where there doesn't need to be an issue?
I think that it depends on the relationship you have with the individual, the connection that you have with the individual. Um, you know, going back to that first question that you had, it hit me because I was thinking about what Curtis said, and it's about that fear, right? If you have an established relationship with an individual and understand that they may be fearful, because most of the time a lot of people are brave because they're afraid, right? And if you allow them to feel that fear and let them know, hey, it's okay to be afraid without calling it. Sometimes people just need to feel okay expressing themselves, and sometimes the expression is negative, but it can be controlled, and you can let them know you're in control. Even though your expression is not the best right now, you
Yes.
can have it, but you gotta have control with it, and kind of walk with them while they're managing this feeling of fear, this managing this feeling of discomfort. And maybe the question isn't, hey, are you good? Because I can see something's going on, but maybe continuing the conversation with a different subject that can continue the dialogue, because sometimes you need to create dialogue so that the subject can come out, because when you go straight to the head, that's when you get the friction, that's when you start butting. But if you can continue a dialogue and open up the conversation and have someone feel like, I can talk about some stuff, and it doesn't, let them throw it, let it land, and you want to talk more about it. If not, let it go, right? I think a lot of us don't are we're not allowed grace. We're not allowed space to express ourselves. Even most of the time, sometimes the expression isn't that great, it's not that positive. But as we all know, when we're working with someone in a heightened state of crisis or just contemplation, we connect with them because we give them that space. They come looking for us when someone just got them at 10, 0 to 60. They come looking for us. Yo, let me tell you what happened. Yo, I was about to pop off. And, da, da, da. And they give us that because we create the platform and say, yo, come, lay it out. For real? That happened? For real? And they go on and go on and they de escalate. And it's the same thing when it comes to health, when it comes to certain problems or pressures that people are dealing with, especially when in our community, when we're bred to be hard, we're bred to be strong, right? And there's strength and weakness. There is.
So you saying that, especially using in context in terms of youth, when they contact you and when they're connecting with you, it's at level 10. And this question kind of bleeds into that too. How do we change the narrative on how society sees young Black men? And I think it's a two-parter because I feel it would help us understand what they're going through. So how do we change the narrative on how society sees young Black men?
So if I could jump in for 1 sec and just
Absolutely.
add to the previous one.
Yes, you can.
One of the things that some of you, my brothers, are well aware, I harass you all the time,
Mm-hmm.
that I think how we check in with us men
Yes.
is I prefer to give you the purpose of the call. Hey, I'm calling because I haven't chatted with you in some time, and I want to check in to make sure you were okay, because I'm worried, because I know that you are always filling other people's cups and I don't know who fills yours.
Yes.
So I tend to always give my brothers the respect that I know that part of the reason why they might be unwell is because you all take care of other people, and because you do such a good job, nobody thinks of taking care of you. So you run out. The cup empties because you filled everybody else's. And I think that gives people the permission to say, I might be a bit broken, but you understand why I'm broken. Right? You understand that I'm out there hustling to care for everybody else. And so this blip is not to do with anything other than my love for the people in my life, but I'm burnt out. And I think that gives space for a conversation to start. because you're giving them the opportunity to say, you know what, you might be onto something, right? And then the second point is I do this with my daughter because of the power dynamic between parent and child.
Mhm.
When she doesn't share, the, the conversation that we have is I say to her, if your mind was weather, what weather would it be? And when she's not doing well, she tells me earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, thunder, and lightning. Sometimes to help somebody, we have to encourage them that we're not trying to get in their business.
Yes.
We're trying to get into their emotions.
Oh.
So we're trying to support your emotional state without necessarily prying into your life. You don't have to tell me it's about you and your spouse. You just need to know that you can say to me, I'm struggling. And then we support each other and say, how do I help you in a moment of struggle? You don't need to tell me about the kids.
Yes.
You don't need to tell me about the work. I'm here for you because you're feeling struggle. And it doesn't have to go beyond that unless you choose, right?
Yes, absolutely valid. I like that example in terms of using the weather. That is very helpful because you don't need to be in anyone's business. Sometimes you just need to address the emotion. That's about it.
Yeah.
I like that. In terms of that last question there, well, there's three other here. I'm going to compress two together, but the other one was how do we change society's views in terms of young Black men? That's really difficult because I feel that it's not up to us to be the narrators of all young Black men. Society will do what society does, right? There's different capacities. Sometimes society view young Black men as troublemakers. Sometimes they view them as low academically. Sometimes they view them as very creative and athletic. There's a variation of perceptions of what society would view a young Black person. But I think at the end of the day, we would love for people to look at them in a positive way and say that, you know, they're amazing, they're ambitious, they know how to achieve their goals. I think it's possible and important for us to hold more of those conversations because we definitely can extract all the negative stuff. We've been around a lot of it for years and we understand what their capacities are. But I think it's time for us to shine the light on the successes and the ongoing successes that are happening with our young people. And when I say success, I'm not talking about, you know, from nothing to something. I'm talking about even if a young person just shows up to your office and says good morning, that's success because they didn't have to, right? This two-party here from Rich, he's saying how to get out of a rut and also how to calm emotions when they are high.
And
So
is
I
the
can answer the
question?
first question.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. So I can answer the first question. I can answer the first question. So in terms of how to get out of a rut, so I would say it's about making yourself uncomfortable. So what I mean by that is it's about breaking patterns, right? So for example, I feel like many people get into a habit of just doing the same things on a daily basis, right? On a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, right? And they get into certain habits, right? That are very comfortable to them, right? So I think in order to get into out of a rut, it's about doing different things and trying different things, right? That's outside of your regular routines, right? That could be, taking a class, trying a new hobby, trying to going out of your way to meet new friends, right? Watching new things, doing different things, right? So I think it starts with just making yourself uncomfortable, right? And doing things that you think you may enjoy,
Yes.
right? Even if you don't know for sure, but just doing different things, make yourself uncomfortable is my answer for that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I have a timekeeper that is reminding me of time. I'm going to squeeze in this last question. How comfortable are you saying I love you to another brother?
Comfortable.
Love all of you brothers. Come on.
Yep.
Comfortable, man.
Easy.
Comfortable, man.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
Super.
Yeah.
Absolutely comfortable.
Yeah. I believe that just to go back to that last question, there's a best way to get out of a rut is definitely using those skills of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, but you have to take time and really figure out what it is you want. everything that we do is based on what we want. Growing up, you always used to hear it, you should, do you need it or do you want it? But most of the time, all of civilization is based, it's all driven off of want. And that's where you see people in precarious situations to any kind of situation based on what they want and are they getting it. Second one is, I think love has been perversed. I think everything's been perverse. So the moment you say something that's been twisted and distorted, people's minds just go left with it. But totally comfortable with I love you, and it should be something that's said more and not perverse in a way, and not just perverse in a way of being sexualized, but even perverse in a way of being used to manipulate people.
Yes.
I love you, man. Do this for me, man. And it's not reciprocated. You're only loving because you know you can get something from them.
Yes. Thank you.
I think it's I want to add on to that because again, I use the word normalize, and I want to add that for the, how do we change, the narrative of Black men and Black boys, and how do we, are we comfortable? It's to normalize this, and it's really interesting because we're going through a shift. Because, of course, what I hear from everyone is, "Have you seen Top Boy? Have you seen Top Boy? Have you seen Top Boy?" One of the phrases they use, "Love, love, love," right? Like it is now part of like vernacular between like groups, and now I'm seeing some of our young people say, yes, love, 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 like in that way, in that manner. So I think it's about being consistent with creating that circle, having that group, spreading and sharing emotion, sharing experiences. But even with some of the young people, letting the light shine on their brilliance by bringing them into some of these spaces, right? Our conversations, I think we're blessed and lucky enough to bring those voices of those young people into rooms, and people like, that's a great idea. That wasn't my idea. It was the 18 or 16-year-old that I just had the honor of conversing with for the past 30 minutes. So how do we create an opportunity to bring those into the space so their brilliance shines as well?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I know that I pressed a little bit over time. I know some of you have to go and tend to your family duties or whatever duties you got to do. Will say is I do love all of you very much, and I appreciate
love you too, bro. Love you too, bro.
We're too, fam.
Right.
So I will throw this out there. I am happy to support whatever you guys are doing. All of you, panelists,
absolutely,
anybody out there. John, feel free to share my contact info. I think we need to keep this going. And the last thing I want to say is there are too many adults that are not being held accountable, and they expect their kids to do well without leadership. They blame the next generation supposed to be great, and they get to still act with no accountability. So it can't fall to just us. We gotta have these kinds of conversations with grown men and say, listen, you need to step up. Because the young men are trying, but they don't have enough people to model after.
Agreed.
So anyway, lots of love, everybody. Lots of love.
I got my brother PG Case also saying, you gentlemen were phenomenal. Love y'all in it. And that was for Steven.
Don't ever let that guy in any of these forums. Who is moderating this? Tasha, next time lock him out.
Blessings flow.
He also said,
PG, shout out large of yourself, PG.
Also, when I said, are you comfortable saying I love you? He sent a message, he goes, Steven's lying. Oh, man.
Like I said, moderator, where were you? Where were you?
I have to give PG a bly. I have to give PG a bly.
Yeah.
But I love listening to the conversation. And to be honest, we have opportunities. So we're looking for more Black male mentors. We have a lot of programming where there are parents looking for their children to have Black male mentors. So that's our goal. So if you're interested, I can definitely send a link to anyone. You could please send me an email if you're interested. My email is iForAdaInstitute.org, or you can send it to John at program@kajengafamily.org. So again, Black male mentors. We have a lot of Black youth that are looking for Black male mentors. So if you're interested, please let us know. And also, in order to keep these conversations going, we also need feedback. Feedback is so important because people don't believe us when we say we need a certain amount of programming, but situations like this is a perfect example. So if you're still on the line, please just I guess scan your phone over this QR code and just fill out a really short survey. It takes about 30 seconds to complete. Let us know how you enjoyed it, what we could improve on, what more information that you would like. Maybe how often would you like to have these conversations so that we can kind of keep the flow going. And that's about
Shameless
it.
plug, shameless plug. We've been working with iForAda on the Black Fathers Network. We are going to continue because we realize that is a space where we can start to do this and potentially integrate some of those young people into those conversations and dialogue. So please look out for that whenever there's events. Let's show up for each other. It is important. Information coming soon. 2024 is going to be bigger. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Bless.
Anybody else want to do a shameless plug? We're a village, so even though this is a iForAda event, it's a community event. So if anybody else has anything coming up,
Yes, Teja, there is a question here in regards to the survey requires permission.
oh, I will open up the permission then.
Please and thank you. I know Alethea was here. Hello, Alethea. JC, thank you so much. Thank you, family. Thank you for joining us. And once again, I appreciate all of you. Thank you for taking the time. Walk good. God bless. And I hope to connect with all of you sooner than later.
Bless, brother. Thank you for having me.
Blessings.
Man.
Thank you,
Take care,
everyone.
guys.
Kwanzaa for those celebrating.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Right.